I walked the Cape Wrath Trail in spring and summer 2026. As there are numerous routes to get you from Fort William to Cape Wrath, I thought it might be quite useful to share with you the route that I took. This first video charts Fort William to Strathcarron. Okay, so I thought it'd be useful to talk through the route that I took. So, started off in Fort William here. The ferry site is very obvious, and earlier on in this video I'll have talked about the times it runs. So it runs across to Camasnagoil there. Goodness knows if that's the right pronunciation or anything like that. And then it's pretty easy walking down this little road. You go all the way down, keep on walking. It seems a bit strange to actually be walking south when you're going north, but you do start going north fairly soon. You come down here and to Inverskattle Bay, which is rather nice. All of this is along a fairly easy road that's pretty quiet because it's not used by many cars at all. And then just past Inverskattle Bay, you take the 4x4 track that goes off to the right, and you'll have probably seen there's a tree here that's got all little sort of mementos, including one from me, which is there. And you follow this 4x4 track all the way up along the Kona River. You'll see a wire bridge on the left-hand side. This is pretty easy walking, a few ups and downs, but nothing drastic at all. It takes you all the way along the river, pretty easy to get down and get water. So there's a private bothy there. I'm just going to move the map over a little bit and keep on going around the Kona River. Good camping there, and various places to camp along here. I decided to camp just somewhere around about here, about a kilometre before you turn off and start the climb. There was a nice, lovely bit of flat grass there. As it was hot, I sat and dangled my legs in the river, and it was excellent. Had a really good night's sleep there. A lovely place to camp. The path goes off to the left and you veer off to the right on a less distinct path. I did find someone camping just about there. I think he was a Dutch guy, but he said that midges were quite bad there. And then you climb up all the way along here. It's a fairly tough track, but it was okay. I did see a mountain biker who was attempting to ride up there, but actually they were having to carry their bike almost all the way along it. And the path is a little bit less distinct, but gradually as you get up and over, it becomes more clear. It was a little bit boggy in places, but it's okay. And it takes you up past the Alnafrang River. So going back here, you get to Callop, which is a couple of little houses there. And there was a little bit of confusion here, actually. I wasn't quite sure which route to go, which wasn't very good for only the second day of the trail. But actually, it's pretty obvious. I wrote a sign to myself, don't cross the bridge. You go along here and follow the Callop River. There are a few very boggy places here, actually. But if you aim for this little lochan here, it's quite easy. And then you'll get to a boardwalk that takes you alongside the road and takes you up to the Glenfinnan Visitor Centre. The Glenfinnan Visitor Centre is very busy. It certainly was when I was there. But basically, as soon as you walk a couple of 100 yards away from the visitor centre, it gets a lot quieter. I popped into the visitor centre for something to eat. They've also got toilets there, which were nice and clean. You follow the road up and bear right through the car park and walk underneath the viaduct. You get some very good views of the viaduct. I don't think the steam train was running when I was there. And follow the little road up. Plenty of places to camp up here. And you're gradually climbing up past the River Finnan, up Glen Finnan, and you eventually get to Corryhully Bothy. Corryhully Bothy is very pleasant actually. It's also got electric there, and you can charge your phones, and they ask you to make a donation, which I did. There's also space to camp just opposite the Bothy, which is very pleasant and very close to water. And then you follow this 4x4 track, which climbs, and becomes quite rough as you take the right hand little bit. And then you go up past Streep, and it's really quite a stiff climb up here all the way up. So you get up to the top. The path is okay-ish, and then there's a steep descent. I found this descent really quite challenging. I slipped a couple of times, wrenched my shoulder, which I wasn't very happy about. But it was okay. It was just fairly tough going. Take it slowly and you'll be all right. Apparently there are spots to camp on the left-hand side there. I can't remember seeing that. You cross down before you get to the steep-sided ravine. And then there's this little bit here. There's lots of camping just up above the river there. I just got to about there, and I could see 3 or 4 guys who were setting up camp on this high bit up there. And just as they were watching me, I slipped and went right down into a bog and got fairly dirty. Didn't hurt myself apart from my pride. Actually, I got here at about 5 o'clock, and I thought I wanted to get to Achul Bothy. The guidebook says this little climb up here was horrible and boggy, but it was absolutely fine, no problem at all. I climbed up and followed this 4x4 path, a good path there, and rather than go round there, I took this little path going up here, a very obvious path, and I marched at a rate of knots all the way up here. It was quite steep in places, but it was okay. And just about there, you start to see Achul through the woods, and you get out of the woods and you can see it on the right-hand side. Not quite sure actually how you get to Achul Bothy, because doesn't seem to be on any path, and there seem to be quite a few people staying there. So I decided not to camp there, and I looked for somewhere to camp around here. I eventually found somewhere. I know that Hayes Outdoors camped up there, but I couldn't see that. It was all a bit boggy round there, so I did find somewhere, but it was a bit wet. And I cut down to the the Dessery River, the River Dessery, to get some water, and again went up to my knees in bog, which at the end of the day wasn't particularly welcoming, but I did actually manage to get some water. So I camped there, and that was perfectly okay. Day 3, I carried on along the River Dessery. This was okay. It wasn't too boggy, but it was a bit squelchy in places, and went up here and then joined the path here. I'll just move the map a little bit closer. The path is okay, but a bit indistinct, and it gets a bit squelchy and a bit boggy and stuff like that. It does become more distinct here as you pass the little lochans, and you cross the river there. That was fine river crossing, no problems at all. And this path gradually takes you up. There are some nice camp spots over here. It takes you up to Surley's Bothy. And I stopped in Surley's Bothy it was lunchtime, so I had something to eat. They've also created a composting toilet there, just about 200 yards away from the Bothy, which was very welcome. And Surley's Bothy was lovely, actually. If it had been later, I would have stayed there. Luckily, the tide was out in Loch Nevis, so I had something to eat and then cracked on. This is all a bit indistinct here. It looks pretty tough if the tide's in going along there, but luckily, as I say, it was out. And you'll see Carnoch here. There's nothing at Carnoch apart from quite a substantial bridge. I made the mistake around about there of just not really watching where I was going, and I literally went up to my waist in bog, which was a little bit scary. I managed to hoik myself out, got to Carnoch Bridge. There's no one around, so I took all my clothes off and cleaned all my clothes and cleaned myself up, and then carried on going along this path that takes you alongside the river. So the River Carnoch meanders along here, and there's a pretty reasonable path which takes you along here. Some tough little climbs on the path and some bits where you have to squeeze through rocks and stuff like that. But I pitched around about here, and you've probably seen this on other videos. It's reminiscent of a scene from Lord of the Rings. It's really quite spectacular. And I found a pretty good place to pitch, and it was easy to get water as well. So stayed the night there. Next morning I woke up quite early, and this little bit was quite tough actually, but I managed to get there. And as I got to here, I found an absolutely brilliant place to pitch. There's a ruin there, but I didn't really see it. There was a Dutch woman who was just leaving camp there, and we decided to walk together. But it was a fantastic place to pitch. So I sort of wish I hadn't camped there and just gone a little bit and gone there. For some reason, I decided not to follow this bit, which becomes very indistinct. And we decided to climb up. This took a good hour to do this ascent here and was really challenging. It was rough ground. It was difficult to see where you're going, and it was pretty steep. But you do eventually meet a pretty clear track at the top. And although you feel like you've done a day's walking just getting up there, it's still, the track is fairly taxing. So you're going up and down, up and down. I did put a tent symbol there. I can't remember whether that was okay to camp or not. But apparently someone did say that they had camped there. All of this going up Glian under Lane is pretty tough going. But, it's doable, and you eventually get to the top and start descending there. And you can see from about here, you can see Barrisdale. So you climb down. There seemed to be a couple of tracks that would take you to Barrisdale. One that allowed you to cross the river and get up to there, but I just followed the obvious one, and we got to Barrisdale. Barrisdale seemed to be nice, a nice campsite. There were no showers, but there were 2 toilets and wash basins and somewhere to cook, but it was really quite busy. So, as I say, I was walking with this Dutch woman. I can't remember her name, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that. We stopped there and had something to eat, and then cracked on. And this next bit, a very clear track that takes you round the headland. And from here onwards, it was tough. The guidebook makes it clear that it's really heavy going. There's a clear path, but it's just up and down and up and down and up and down. And there's some beautiful views of Barrisdale Bay and Lochbag and places like this, but it just seems never ending. So it took me about 2.5 hours to do this bit, past Runeval, Sciari. Again, some lovely views, but really hard going. And you come down by Lochbag and you get to Kinlochhorn. There's nothing at Kinlochhorn apart from a rather nice B&B with a cafe. I did ask whether they had a spare room, but they were all booked up. They did manage to put me in a corner and give me some soup and some cake, which was nice. And just, you go down the road and over the river. There's a field which is easy to camp in, and it's pretty easy to get water there as well. So I camped there. It was quite a wet night, but the rain had finished by the time I woke up. I think the next day was one of the hardest days of the whole trail. You follow the path up here, really stiff climb up here, and it climbs and climbs and climbs, really steep, and all the way up here, and you pass as a little wooden estate shelter. I did contemplate following the line of pylons all the way up here, which takes you up and around, but I decided not to do that after all. I thought I'd rather like to see the Strathcarron Ridge and things like that. And also I met up with two guys and we decided to walk together, which gave me some confidence. We contoured around here. All of this was very hard. Up Sigur Naskin, trackless around here. Sort of keep to the east of the river and aim for this little lochen here. Nowhere to camp around here. It's all very steep. And you go up past the Strathcarron Ridge and through this rocky bit. All tough walking. And up here, up the Strathcarron again, which is hard. And you come out here and eventually start to descend and pick up a little bit of a track, and then it becomes pathless, and then you cross the river. Actually, it was fine crossing the river. It was only about 6 inches deep. Possible place to camp along there, and once you cross the river, you pick up a better 4x4 track, but it's still very rocky. It's quite hard walking, and then you descend and you finally see Shield Bridge and Glenshiel campsite, which is here. Really worth staying at the Glenshiel campsite. As I said, you can post parcels there. They've got good facilities, and you can eat at the Kintail Lodge Hotel, which was okay but overpriced. So stayed there. Walked up to the Kintail Lodge, had dinner, came back, washed my clothes. There didn't seem to be anything at Shield Bridge. I thought there might have been a service station, but there wasn't. The next day I left, stopped at the Wee Bun Shop, I think it was called, by Kintail Lodge. It was lovely. Got a nice breakfast roll there and some cake and stuff like that. And walked along the road, and then it splits off to the right. There is a little cafe there, I think. I'm not sure it was open when I was there. And you take this little road, which takes you up to Morvich. There is a campsite there, which looked really quite pleasant, but I didn't need to stay there. I decided not to go to the falls because I'd read that it was quite challenging and I haven't got a head for heights, and I did want to make life a little bit easier. So you follow the little road and it moves into a decent track. Follow the river, quite pleasant, easy walking. Cross the river, up through the woods here, which was very nice. And then you peel off and follow this track up here if you want to avoid the falls. A very, very steep section, sort of 45 degrees steep, and it never seems to end, but you do get there. And you walk through it, fairly tough going. You go down and then you climb up Carnen Creithnaeth. Sorry about the pronunciation. Path becomes very sketchy. You basically, there's no path there and you're winging it a little bit. You can see this river from right up here, and it's basically a matter of I wasn't able to pick up this path, so I came down somewhere around here, and it took me about an hour to get down this little bit. It was a little bit sketchy, but it was okay. I just took it easily. And then you get to the River Eicheg. That's quite a wide river, but it was easy to ford. It was probably about a foot deep, so a nice little paddle. And then you pick up this really good 4x4 track. It started to rain quite a bit there. You might hear it's raining outside now, which is good for the garden. And then you carry along this 4x4 track, and pretty easy walking. which eventually joins into a road. There is noted down that there's a bunkhouse here, but that's now closed. You go through Fadoch, nothing there. Kililian, and up to Nonach Lodge. I wasn't really concentrating, so I detoured a little bit here, and then had to come back, walk up past through Nonach Lodge, and around this boggy path that takes you up Glen Ling. But just around about there, I think it was, there was a brilliant space to pitch. Suddenly, in all this bogginess, you got a lovely bit of green grass. And I was dead pleased because it had been raining. The rain stopped. I was able to pitch, able to get some water, and I had a good night's sleep. So next morning, I left. Not bad walking. There's a pretty clear track all the way. You climb up, but it's not bad at all. And you get to this nice little wooded bit. I passed a couple of other walkers who were day walkers, actually. So it's not bad at all walking. There's a nice little loch here. You join this very clear path going up and then down. Very pleasant there. You get a good view of Strathcarron there. Takes you over a bridge, over the river. Various places to camp, I think, if you wanted to. And then you start getting a little bit closer to civilization. Atterdale Gardens. If you want to avoid the gardens, you go through there. But actually, there's a little pay kiosk there. And I went in and talked to the two ladies there and said, look, I don't really want to pay to look at the gardens, but can I go to the cafe? And they were very kind and let me go there. I promised not to look at the gardens. But it was impossible to see them as you're walking through. They looked lovely. And there was an Honesty Box cafe, which was really nice. So I sat down there and had a sandwich and cake and coffee and everything like that. And then walked through. And then you can join this A890 for 3 kilometres to Strathcarron, but it was really busy. So I just went to the station there, Atterdale Station, and the train's running about once an hour. And I just got the train up to Strathcarron there. And I was staying at the Strathcarron Hotel, which is just opposite the station.